we're just going to put it, we're not even going to try to hide it. So we're just going to stick it.
Okay.
Just really pinch your turtleneck.
Yep.
Yeah. And that should work.
Okay, cool.
Wait, are these the same?
Do we do a test? Okay. I guess this is all good. Okay. So it's a little bit wonkified, but it's okay. Are you ready to go? We all good? Okay, awesome. Hey everyone, welcome to this Data Science Dojo Seattle meetup. My name's Rebecca. I'll be going through the tutorial with you tonight. It's good to get out every now and again and just learn something new together, especially in a practical setting. And I'm quite surprised some people actually turned up, considering we have blizzard snow out there. So good on you for risking your lives coming here. I'm eternally grateful. So I actually work for Data Science Dojo. I'm a technical writer and instructor, and I help teach the bootcamp course here. I'm not very good with self-introductions, so I'll just say you can look up my bio online, or you're welcome to reach out to me later through LinkedIn, whatever makes you feel comfortable. But let's just get started. Okay. So what we're going to learn tonight. I'm going to introduce you to standard web scraping commands in R. So we're going to go through how to just scrape, the main header or title text of a web page, and also the paragraph text. We're going to be looking at timely data, so text that was published within an hour or a certain time frame. I'm going to also introduce you to a little bit of sentiment analysis. So we're going to be scoring the sentiment of the text. And then when we get the results of our analysis, we're going to send an automatic email alert of the results. And I'm also going to show you how to schedule your script to run every hour in the background of your computer, so you don't have to manually do this. You can free up your time to work on more interesting tasks. Take a moment now to download the full R script if you would like to follow along. I just think it's easier to follow along to tutorials when you have the full R script available to you. Especially if you're kind of new to R. So if you just go to code.datasciencedojo.com, and if you look under web scraping R master, you'll see it there. It's just our web scraping meetup share. We'll hand code some things, and then we'll just run over other parts of the code just to save time. But I will explain what we'll code each step of the way for you. And we'll lightly touch on sentiment analysis, and this is just one way to analyze the scraped text, but I won't go too deep into the underpinnings of the algorithm. I will explain, obviously, at a high level how it works and how it's able to calculate a score, but our bootcamp course obviously goes through this more in depth on how computer programs make sense of text. And there are other ways to analyze the text too, and most of the time you might just want to compare texts. But we'll focus more on the web scraping and automation part. So let's start with a kind of hypothetical scenario. if you like. So we're going to web scrape US political events to then score the sentiment of the text. And the reason this might be useful is maybe we want to gauge whether negative feelings on the current US political situation remain constantly negative or maybe positive. Maybe they might follow a downward negative trajectory, or they might follow an upward positive trajectory. Or maybe they just drastically change over time, and you might want to be alerted to those drastic changes by the hour. So if the sentiment was consistently positive by the hour and then it suddenly dropped to extremely negative, you might want to be alerted to that so you can act on it in the moment and find out what might have caused that. This obviously applies to a lot of customer satisfaction kind of apps where customers are constantly happy and then all of a sudden everything goes bad in a matter of minutes because of some mess up, and the company might not be fully aware of it yet. And the data might show that it takes months to rebuild a positive sentiment back up after only one bad incident. So that could be a potential useful application that might come out of this tutorial for you. All right, let's get on to the coding part. So I'm going to be using RStudio. I just find it easy to edit and debug code in RStudio, so I'll be using this for the tutorial. We're going to be using RVest. RVest is just a standard web scraping tool in R. Sorry, did you have a question?
Could we also use Selenium?
Yes, we can, but I'm just going to use a standard web scraping tool in R called RVest. So you can use other web scraping tools as well, but I'm going to show you how to do web scraping using RVest, basically. Yeah.
Before we proceed, sorry, how do you access the script again? It's code.datascience.
Yep, let me take you back to that. So if you just go to code.datasciencedojo.com, go under web scraping R master, you'll find it there. It's just the web scraping meetup share file there.
Yeah, you have to register.
Oh, I did ask if this was going to be made public. Okay, no problem. If you go to my GitHub, just put Rebecca Merritt GitHub. You'll see it checked there as well. And if you go to it, it should be under my web scraping R repository.
How do you spell it?
Sorry, MERRETT. I'll make sure this is actually publicly available. You probably should have previewed it, but that's okay. I'll just give it like 10 seconds just so you can get yourself set up quickly.
The one you uploaded 7 hours ago?
Yep, that's the one. Okay, cool. So obviously, yep, you can use other packages, but let's just use RVest. It's simple to use. It's a good one to get started with for web scraping. You can do a lot of cool things with it. So to install this, we're just going to, install packages, use this function here, uncomment this line to install and run it. And obviously, don't forget to load it into R in order to use the tool. So let's do this now. Okay, cool. Before we jump right into it, let's just have a quick play with RVest just to get used to the basic commands, familiarize ourselves a bit. So we're going to kind of scrape text off an example web page. It's going to be a Reddit web page here. So if you Google this, it should be like the first or second search result. We'll just use this as a simple example. And we're going to grab the URL of this, and we're going to use the read HTML function to read in our source using RVest. So I'll just call it Reddit web page. I'm going to use the read HTML function. I'm going to paste in my URL, so give it my source. Okay, cool. Once we've read in our source, the next step is we want to grab the title text on the page. So how do we do this? Well, if you simply view the source code on the web page, and we're going to search for the title text. So partisan electoral officials, and we can see that the title text lies within the title tags. So what the program's going to do is look for the title tags and then grab everything in between these tags. So I'll help you write it out here. So we'll refer to our source. And we're going to look for the HTML node called title. And we're going to grab the text. Okay, cool. So when I run this command here, it should output the title of our web page. So let's go ahead and run this. Awesome. So we have successfully scraped the title of the web page. Next step we want to do is grab the comments or the paragraphs, and they usually lie within the paragraph tags. So same applies. We'll go into our source code and we'll just look for the comment text. So here's an example of some comment text here, and it lies within, you can see that it lies within the paragraph tag, but it doesn't just, sorry, I'll highlight it here. It doesn't just lie within this paragraph tag, any paragraph tag, it lies within this specific paragraph tag with this particular class. So we need to specify that in our command. So I'll help you do this. So we'll write a very similar command here. We'll just refer to our source again. And we'll look for all HTML nodes or all cases or instances of the paragraph tag. Place a period there, and we'll just copy the class ID here. And I'll just double check that's referring to this one here. Okay, cool. And I want to grab the text. Okay, awesome. So when we run this, we should have all our comments, Reddit comments on this web page. So let's run this. Okay, cool. So it successfully grabbed all the comments that lie within that particular paragraph. Sorry, excuse the coarse language. That's some Reddit user. But yeah, it's grabbed all our comments that lie within that particular paragraph tag. Okay, so now that we've had a quick play, let's kind of get into it. So we want to look at what's happening in the US, what the sentiment is in the current US political situation on Reddit. People are constantly posting on Reddit, so I wouldn't be surprised if there was like a comment every minute or so. We're going to use this source here. It's just the politics stream of Reddit, so it's just r/politics/new. So let's copy this URL and use the read HTML function to read in our source. So let's run this command here. Now that we've read in our source, we want to get the timestamps of each of these posts. Now they don't come in a traditional datetime format. They're just kind of like tags where it says whether it's published 5 minutes ago or 2 minutes ago, but it gives us an indication on how recent the content is, and we want to grab this kind of information. And it lies within this particular tag here. So we're going to input this tag, and it's going to look for that and grab everything in between those tags. We want to get the text. So let's run this line here. And let's have a look at our times. Okay, cool. So we have about 8 time values here. Everything was published minutes ago, so everything's quite recent. Now that we've got our time values, we want to get the corresponding URLs for our time, so each individual web page. And so we're going to use this particular tag here is where our URLs lie. And we're going to look at the href attribute. We don't want to get the text per se, we want to get the href attribute for our URLs. So let's run this line of code here. And let's have a look at our URLs. Okay, awesome. So we've got 8 URLs that correspond to our time values. Now that we've got our URLs and we've got our time values, we want to put them into a nice, neat data frame. It just makes it easy to organize this stuff. So we're going to use the data frame function. For those who are just very new to R, it's an easy function to just organize your data into columns and rows. So the first column is going to be news page, and it's going to store all our URL values. And the second column is going to be published time, which is going to have all our time values. And we're just going to call it Reddit news page time. So let's run this line of code. And we should have 8 rows and 2 columns, and let's just see this is the case. And it is. That's great. Okay, now that we've got it into a nice, neat little data frame, what we need to do is filter this down to the most recent content. And I'm only interested in URLs that were published a minute or basically right now. I'm not interested in things that were published hours ago. I want everything within the hour. So everything that was published minutes ago or right now. In this case, everything was published minutes ago, so it's not going to filter anything out. But if there was stuff that was published more than an hour ago, it would filter it out. So we're going to create a new data frame, and using this grep function, we're going to look at published times and then extract the rows that we want, or the URLs that we want, the most recent data. So let's go ahead and run this. And when we look at the dimensions, nothing's changed because everything is pretty much recent. Okay, the next part of this big for loop here, we're just like similar commands that we've been kind of practicing already. But we're going to loop through the URLs, grab the main head and paragraph of the text or comments and store it in their own respective vectors, so in the title and comments vector. And then we're going to create a data frame to get it ready for analyzing the text or modeling on. So let's go ahead and quickly run these, and I'll explain a bit further what we're trying to do here. So while that's running, sorry, it's not the most efficient. It's going to take a moment or two. So what we're trying to do is create one vector with, say, titles and another with comments. And each comment is going to correspond to a title. So title 1 is going to have comment 1, the first comment that belongs to title 1. Then we're going to have the second comment that belongs to title 1. So this will be comment 2 that belongs to title 1. Then we have the next title and the first comment for the next title, and so on and so forth. Sorry for the typo. And so basically, this is the way that we want to organize our data. We want to have each individual comment and tie it to the title that it belongs to. It's just easy for us to map out and see which comment belongs where and just have a good look at our data. So that's what we're trying to do here. Okay, cool. So now that we've got our titles and our comments values, what are we going to do? Put it in a data frame. So once again, using that data frame function, we'll create a column called headline with our title values. And we'll create a column called comments with our comments values, and we'll organize it into this kind of structure. So let's go ahead and do that. And let's look at our dimensions. So in the last hour, we have 103 Reddit comments on US political news and events that have happened recently. As I said, Redditors are very passionate about, want to make their opinion known. So it's a good source to work with if you're looking just to practice in this kind of like area. But what we're going to do now is let's have a look at our comments, because we're going to be analyzing on this text. And if there's any issues with our comments, we don't want to find out when we're ready to analyze it. We want to find out early. We want to find out now so we can nip it in the bud. So it's a good idea just to inspect our comments and see how they look generally. So we're just going to look at the first few comments just to get an idea. Okay. So from what I can see here, the first few comments are basically disclaimers. So Reddit has a lot of disclaimers reminding people to, behave online and don't be assholes. We don't really want to analyze this kind of text. We want to filter this out. So this is going to skew our results. Whether we're counting words or we're trying to get the overall sentiment, we don't want this to impact our results because it's not meaningful information. It's not, real Reddit user comments. So what we're going to do is identify all our disclaimer comments, and we're going to filter them out because they're not the real Reddit comments. How do we know what the real sentiment is if we're not even using the real Reddit comments? And we don't want these to kind of like skew our results. So what are we going to do first is isolate them, identify them. So I've just put them into a vector or kind of list, and there are 4 main disclaimer comments that I'm really not interested in analyzing. So let's put them into a kind of list. Let's run this. And what we're going to do is use that list to filter out all comments that do not match each item in that list. So if it's not a disclaimer comment, it's going to be filtered into its own little data set. And so we're basically just removing disclaimer comments. So let's go ahead and run this line of, we're going to use that subset function. So let's run this line of code. And Now let's have a look at the dimensions. And cool. As you can see, we have a lot less rows here because we're not including the disclaimer comments. It went from 103 down to like 71, which is expected. And now let's just preview the first few comments. Make sure it's done what it's supposed to. Okay, awesome. Now we've got real user comments, not those silly disclaimer comments. Okay. Now moving on to the next part of this tutorial, I'm going to introduce sentiment analysis to you quickly. So what we're going to do is score the overall sentiment of each comment, and we're going to use sentiment R library to do this. And sentiment R is going to take into account the overall sentiment at a sentence level. It takes into account surrounding words to the target word, such as not happy, so happy being the target word, the surrounding word being not, for example. So a lot of like sentiment analysis tools, whether in R or Python, whichever scripting language you're working with, tend to look at words in isolation. So they don't really look at the broader context. So they'll see a sentence and it'll have happy in it, and then they'll do a dictionary lookup or a word lookup, and that word will be tagged positive. So therefore, isn't the sentence just overall positive? When it might not be. So you can have things like not happy, for example, negations that cancel out a positive word. And so the good thing about sentiment R is it goes that extra step and basically looks at a context window or surrounding words, weights them and says, okay, so these words in combination together have an overall negative sentiment rather than a positive sentiment, because we're using negations like not happy, for example. So that's a good thing about using this kind of package. Another good thing about it is it's kind of really just straightforward, easy to use. Straightforward to install, the commands are easy, the functions are not like cryptic or anything like that. So let's go ahead and install this. Let's use this package. So it's just the sentiment R package. And don't forget to load this in. Okay. Just ignore the warnings there. This will work for my version of R 3.5 or above. Okay, so I'll kind of introduce you just to this. There's a lot of different functions you can use under sentiment R, but the most basic and the most easiest one of them all is just this one, sentiment. And so what we're going to do is just input our comments into this, and it'll give an overall sentiment for each comment or for each sentence. So it'll rate, so for each individual comment, it'll say, oh, this one's generally more positive, and it'll give a value between -1 and 1. The more negative the value is, the more negative the sentiment. The more positive the value is, the more positive the sentiment. If it's 0, smack bang in the middle, it means that it's very neutral. Just very neutral, not a very strong kind of emotional comment. So let's go ahead and run this. So we'll look at our no disclaimers data frame, and we'll give it our comments. Okay. So you may have noticed there's an error here, down below here. Sorry, I have trouble highlighting my screen. So the lesson here is always check your data, constantly check your data. So what this error is saying that it's treating each comment as a factor level, sort of like a categorical level of level A, B, C. We don't want our comments to be treated as like a factor level. We want our comments to be treated as, you know, pieces of text, as strings or characters, as R refers it to. So we need to fix the way that our comments are being treated here, because sentiment R takes characters, it doesn't take factor levels. So the lesson here is just to kind of like always constantly check your data. And this is why it's good to check it beforehand rather than when you're ready to do the analysis. It saves you all the kind of like we're beforehand. So let's go ahead and change this into a character format. So to do this, we're just going to override our comments or change it into, and we're going to use the as character function. So this will change it into characters or strings is what we want. Okay. Okay, cool. So now we're ready to apply the sentiment function. So I'm just going to put it into its own little name here called, I don't know, sentiment scores. Okay, cool. And I'm going to apply the sentiment function now that we've got the right character type. Apply that onto the comments, because that's what we want to get the sentiment for. Okay, cool. Now let's just have a look at the first few scores or so. Okay, so we have a column here that kind of scores each sentence or each comment's overall sentiment. Some of them are pretty neutral, some of them more on the positive side. We have some negative. Now, this is great, but I'm not really interested in what is the sentiment for each individual comment or at sentence level. I'm more interested in what is the overall sentiment across all Reddit users in the last hour on the US political situation. So are the majority or is the average more negative than it is positive? I'm not interested on an individual level. So what do I do then? I'm just going to average out these values here. So I'm just going to get the average of all comments across Reddit in the political stream. So let's go ahead and do that. And
an average or a weighted average?
just the average. Or maybe you could do weighted average as well, whatever you want. Just it's just an example of,
Sure.
yeah, getting the overall sentiment. Yeah. And I'll just call it, I don't know, average sentiment score. And so we'll take the sum of it. Don't know why this keeps jumping around. And we'll just divide it by the length of whatever it is. Okay. Okay, let's look at the average in the last hour, just out of curiosity. Okay, so within the last hour, Reddit users were generally more on the positive side, not dramatically, but they were a little bit more closer to neutral. Yeah, that's interesting enough, and maybe we could look into the kind of events that happened that would cause that. So yeah, we've basically done the scripting part of it. So we've scraped our data, we've put it in formats that it needs to be in, and we've kind of analyzed it, and we've got the results of our analysis. An idea to take this further is instead of emailing this as an alert to ourselves, we can store this in a table and plot it over time, you know, to see if there's like drastic changes or if there's some kind of like pattern happening there. That's an idea that you might want to like build on this exercise if you're interested. If you'd like to look, oh, sorry.
Sorry to interrupt you. The sentiment score, how does the algorithm score? The negative is,
Yep, so,
what is the scale? What is the?
Yep, so it's a number between -1 and 1. The more negative the number, or the closest to -1, the more negative the sentiment is, and the more higher the more positive the number, the more positive.
Okay,
And if it's
so-
smack bang in the neutral, it's like neutral
That
kind of.
makes sense, yeah.
Yeah. And there's lots of documentation I could probably direct you to on how it actually scores that. As I said, it takes a context window, it looks at negations and things like that and surrounding words, and I think it does a cluster and then pulls it all together and gives it like a score on considering that there's negations, considering there's the amplifiers, this is the overall score in the context window.
Okay.
Anyway, but that's later reading. Cool. Yeah, so as I said, you could take the analysis part of this further if you like, or build on the script. Yeah, but we offer like, I mean, in our bootcamp, we kind of, I won't go too deep into it now, but in our bootcamp, we kind of go through this kind of process in how programs make sense of text. And we also teach you like core machine learning concepts alongside with this. If you're interested, you can reach out to Blair, our marketing manager, or you're welcome to check our curriculum online. But yeah, this just gives you a bit of like dipping your toes in the water. Okay. So now let me show you how to schedule this. Yeah.
What is the element, like, what is the elements?
The what, sorry?
What is the elements
Elements, how do you mean?
Element ID, that first column.
Oh, okay. So this is like the sentence ID, and element, I think it's like the same. Yeah, you have the word count within this comment, within this sentence. So maybe somebody was like, screw that. And then I think this is like, so this, for me, I haven't really gone into this, but this is like at a sentence level. So this would be a singular sentence, and then this would be like the score for that sentence, and all the words within that sentence are 2 words. All the words within this sentence are 7 words. All the words within that sentence are 10 words.
Could it be the HTML element?
I haven't actually looked into that, to be honest. Yeah, I don't know. I was only ever interested in just the sentiment score, but they have tons of yeah, sorry.
So for the element ID, I was wondering that, and so it's like per headline, the first comment of the first headline is that element, and so there are 3 sentences. So that's the
that are tied to this.
And so it's like hello username, and then thank you for participating in our politics.
Okay.
And then it's a whole thing.
Oh, awesome! Thank you. Yeah. So as you said, all these ones here are like the same headline, I guess you could call it. These are things within that one headline. Yeah. And then you've got obviously your word count within that. Yeah, Sentiment R has tons of documentation on it. For me, I was just kind of interested in the figure. I'm like, just give me the figure. Anyway.
So if you split it more refined, like every second, instead of you took this one, the comment just now, right?
Yeah, within the last hour.
Instead if you take for every second you run this program, so you think that, like I think you are planning to do that graph, right, based on the time, and then you want to do analysis, sentiment analysis. So the results, I wonder if the results will vary.
Yeah, they might vary over time. You might, I'm not sure what would be happening, but it could correlate to what's happening in the world, obviously, but you might see things like an upward trajectory, and then all of a sudden there's a drastic, dip in the it suddenly turns negative. So for example, this is just hypothetical, maybe the overall sentiment was starting to just incrementally go into an upward positive trajectory, and then the government shutdown happened, and then since that event happened, it just plummeted into a negative sentiment. So that might be an interesting thing to look at over time. If you look at by the hour, or it could be by the week, or whatever time frame you're interested, over a really long period of time, that you get some really interesting patterns where you see people usually get really skeptical right after the election, but they're really positive before it. And this happens over many years of, like, we can see a reoccurring pattern over many years of politics, that people just tend to get really skeptical at these times. So if you're, I don't know, a political campaigner, or you're working for a PR agency that has to spin good politics or whatever, you could say, okay, now is the time to go out and PR the hell out of the politician, because this is the time when they're most skeptical, like something like that. That's maybe an application. I was thinking more on a customer satisfaction level. So this is like analogous to customer satisfaction in the sense that you can act on it in a timely manner. If you see that, oh, okay, it's overall our comments are positive, 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 then they've plummeted. What just happened? Why? It's never been that negative. Let's act on it. So that's another application that could be useful as a result of doing this kind of like fun exercise. And yeah, I encourage you to go build on this and actually, I don't know, maybe do an app out of it or something. I would. Okay. Yeah, so the last part of this tutorial, okay, so we've got our script, that's all well and good, but now let's just run this in the background of a computer. We don't want to do this manually every time. You can do this through an interface if you're using Windows called Task Scheduler. If you're using Mac, the equivalent is Automator. And if you're using Linux, the equivalent is Genome. These are just kind of easy interface tools to go and schedule a script every hour or so. I am going to do it through an R package called Task Scheduler R. And the equivalent package, if you're using OS X or Linux, is cron R. There's lots of documentation online about it, but the commands are quite similar. They're not like drastically different. But let me show you an example of how to schedule your script through this. So we'll obviously install and load this package. Now you can also use the UI version of this. If you'd like to do that, just install these packages here, mini UI shiny files. After you install those, you just simply go to the add-ins drop-down menu at the top, and you select Schedule R scripts on Windows. There's equivalent for this in Mac and Linux as well. And you have your options here. You can schedule it hourly. You can upload your script here. You can specify a start date if you like. But I'm just going to do it the old-fashioned way, and I'm going to use the task scheduler create function. Okay, so let me explain the inputs into this function. I don't know why that keeps doing that. So the first input here, obviously we want to give it a name. So in my case, I'm just going to call it our web scraping Reddit. We obviously have to point to where our script is on our local computer, or where it's sitting in some shared folder or something like that. So I've just put it in my web auto scripts folder. I want to schedule it hourly. You can make it weekly or another time frame that you're interested in. But in my case, I'm interested in scheduling this hourly, considering I'm doing an hourly recap or summary of people's sentiment. You can specify a start time. I'm just happy to go with the default, which is my current time now, or my system time. And I'll have it kick off within 62 seconds of my current time now. My system time follows an hour-minute kind of format, so I have to make sure that that's correct. The start date as well, you can specify your own start date, but I'm just happy to go with the default, which is, you know, my current time, my current date now, or my system date. Might want to watch out for this. In some countries, you know, depending on how your computer is set up, but my computer is set up with a month, day, year format. In some countries, they do day, month, year. Where I'm from in Australia, they would do day, month, year. So just be aware of that. Make sure that it matches your computer system's like date format. But no biggie. And yeah, and then it's just pointing to your R script executable file. So this usually sits in your bin folder, in your R program, in your program files if you're using Windows. And so once you've input all these, you basically run this, and it should schedule your script to run every hour. When you see this output success, obviously it's you know, running in the background. You can close out of R, and this will still run. The only thing you need to be aware of is you need to keep your computer constantly on. As you can see, it's kicking off there. If you don't, this will stop running. So power consumption might be something you might want to consider. But you can set your computer to never sleep. But that's just something to think about. I'll give you an idea of the kind of, well, once this stops running, the kind of output you'll get from this as well, besides an email alert, which you'll see in your inbox. They will have a log of what happened in your script. So you can see any errors here. And I think we forgot to comment out one of them, maybe. Oh, okay, good. So here it's successfully sent an email. If there was any errors, you could see it, like if you had any print statements to help you debug this, you'd see it in your log file, so this is useful to know. But in the case of that, I'll just show you what the end result is. This was something that I sent to myself not too long ago. You now have a snapshot of the sentiment that happened in the last hour and people's kind of overall feelings about the current US political situation, or it can be your customer satisfaction kind of alert. And that's basically it, to be honest. Was there any questions or anything like that?
You probably have an option to write. You can write to a specific file. Once your script runs, you can write it to a specific file, like a database.
I would be confident there's definitely an option like that, yeah.
Can I give you a plug here? I just noticed in my copious notes as a dedicated reader of KD Nuggets that there's an article called Automated Web Scraping in R by Rebecca. So,
yeah. Yeah, you can read the, obviously go ahead.
Pizza with it, but
Yeah, well, yeah, you could definitely check out the, thank you. You could definitely check out the blog.
forget that?
Oh, no, I didn't. I just, maybe I did. I don't know why. I was just focused on the teaching part of it. Yeah, just read the blog if you like. This is good because you got to do something a bit more hands-on, have somebody explain each step of the way. So yeah, it's good just, as I said, to come out every now and then and learn something together in a practical setting, rather than just reading one of the 1 bajillion versions of this online. You can come out and
You can learn these skills properly without having to sign up for a 5-year PhD or master's data science dojo boot camp with 5 days hands-on course that can help you get up to speed. So.
Yeah, so Data Science Dojo, not to like rabbit on about Data Science Dojo, but yeah, we do believe in making this more accessible in the form of at least making the teaching and the learning part more accessible. So I think only recently this has become a thing. Like it's traditionally been like a very highly academic exercise. It's only behind the walls of universities in the exclusivity club of the academic. Like just, you know, we don't really want people to learn that way. We want people to learn in a practical way. They can be like, okay, I'm not like a hardcore PhD person, but I can go use some skills. I can make an app. This is where the world's heading. We don't need to all be like under the barrier of academia. So this is what we kind of like, we're trying to achieve here in our company anyway. So data science for everyone is our, not just like some nice words to put on a website, it's actually what we're really genuinely trying to do. That's what I'm genuinely trying to do, yeah. As I said, you could always reach out to me on LinkedIn if you have any additional questions or whatnot, or just interested. Thank you.